So the fifth group had Amrit from Basics as one of the key people who spoke about the solutions that they had looked at, but he spoke more broadly, not as not particularly about a particular, not about a model that they had done, but of the different kinds of solar solutions and also biomass solutions. There was, pico, nano. So I guess the small house solutions and a cluster solution, and then also a microgrid or a mini grid. And I think largely the challenges that were identified were that maintenance was one of them. That actually the cost of the panel itself is 1/3 the cost of the project, but the battery and the storage is much larger, and that needs to be replaced over a period of 3 to 4 years. So the cost of replacement of that becomes significant. So it's not only the original investment, but also the maintenance of the cost of maintaining that system, and that very often that is not properly planned, and so people run into problems. There was also the question of whether but he did identify that we were still in a learning phase, and probably certain things that we do identify now as problems, we may be able to find solutions for. There was also, I think, things that came up with other groups like the monsoon, where the systems generate less power. Also the challenge of I think largely around why is it not a good investment. So I think mainly he identified for us reasons why entrepreneurs were sort of struggling with why they should be investing in this system. Then I think he also spoke a little bit about the telecom tower and the solar panel, working with the telecom tower and that model. And then we went on to sort of larger questions of how can loads be managed in a system where you have diverse production systems feeding into the grid. And I think in our earlier discussion that was raised, so I'm not going to go into that because we felt that currently that's not really a challenge. So largely this current system seems to survive on the ability of somebody to put in the investment. And at the moment this whole sector is driven mostly by either grants or by private investment. And those are the two current places from which money is coming for making this work.
But this is for the microgrid, right?
Yeah. So then we also went on to speak about the rooftop solution and net metering. I think our group sort of had many levels of discussion. There was some conversations that, I think we basically identified that if we look at the problem only from the perspective of an investment or a good investment or an entrepreneurship model, then we asked the question whether that's the only way of looking at this and whether we should also be looking at it from other perspectives. We also had Mona and John himself who shared examples of solutions they had implemented. Mona's, of course, is a biomass model that's at the household level, where she said even there I think maintenance was an issue, and people have stopped using. So most households have that biomass model in the village, but people have stopped using it because, not with you, other houses have stopped using it, but your model is working and is delivering well. John was also sharing the experience of the Timbuktu collective.
Point I was trying to make in the group was more that somehow in the last 2 years, the whole solar or the energy and the electric, even the whole energy question has been moved has got propelled in certain directions, which is similar to the way in which the SHGs were moved in a certain direction by the SKSs and basics and things like that. Okay? A certain kind of a revenue model, a certain kind of an investment model, which actually then slowly takes precedence over the other social model that we are talking. And I think that some of the choices that come out of it, and some of the kind of axioms that seem to be unquestioned, come from that. And we thought that we were getting into an alternate renewable energy space. We are going to get into an organic energy space, link between local cows and biomass and fertilizer and that kind of stuff. And then suddenly we find that no, only those solutions which can be managed by an expert-led kind of movement or an expert-led model are somehow being seen as viable and promoted and things like that. And it is these that are very much incompatible with the larger Adani kind of systems also, because then they will do intergrid exchange and all those kind of things. Okay, so that's an observation. Now how exactly we will work, that I think we need to examine this. I have specific problems with the way in which we think of viability purely from the point of view of investment. My investment is 10%, I have to get 12% I have to pay the bank, so then I have to make 1 or 2 more percent on it, therefore my whole cost is going to be 12%. If this is not capitalism, what is? If this is not appropriating 2% surplus from the local area and then taking it and giving it back to your ADB or whatever it is, what else is? And here we are talking of that wherever the resources are actually belonging to the people which are appropriating, that we say has become unreliable. Somehow or the other it is conspired to that. In the morning somebody mentioned that biomass, once it's become valuable, then people will want more money for it. What's wrong with it? If people want more money for it from biomass, and the person who is actually the part of the project is getting more salary or getting more money for 1 kilo of biomass they collect, in fact it increases their wages and also increase their purchasing power of the same energy. That is not looked at as a good spiral. We talk of a virtual economic spiral, that is not looked as a good virtuous economic spiral. Whereas if the bank comes and puts 10% and you get 2 more percent, and that 2% goes back to the bank, or 1% goes back to the bank, you consider this as a very virtuous economic cycle, because then the World Bank becomes a little more viable. So this is, I want the question that you asked, it is actually more related to this. The choices that are being made. Today we have technology where demands, micro level demands, the way in which people perceive what their problems are, all that can be monitored and metered from the basic user level. Using smartphone technologies, that everything can be done. Still we think that only the expert surveyor, only the expert documentalist or whatever will be able to deliver and tell you what should be done. So I don't know whether there's a lot of connected issues which are on similar lines which we need to inquire into.
Most of the discussions in microgrid, they are focusing on solar only. I don't know why we haven't gone to the other one, which is biomass. Especially we are talking about rural areas. The country as a whole has a huge biomass base, and the technology is fairly advanced. IISc has done a lot of work. Probably Mr. Bachchan may be able to do it. But I know there are many biomass units running. In conjunction with solar photovoltaic panels, if biomass also can be filled, then many of the issues what we are talking about, say unreliable power supply and all that, can be advanced. And another issue here is I'm surprised when you talked about Selco. Selco now is more into rural areas, now giving a complete solution. Probably Selco, you have a representative that was not raised in when you said. So Dr. Harish Handa is doing very well. He has gone to a lot of villages. He is trying to give a complete solution.
We did discuss biomass, and Amit was of the opinion that bulk of the biomass units have actually failed. The connection between the agricultural waste and the biomass plants has not really been made. and there is an added problem in that bulk of the agricultural waste is actually burnt on site on the field. So, not only is it not being used in these biomass-based plants, but it's also contributing to carbon emissions. But we really don't know what the root cause is. I suspect it's something cultural.
No,
If it is a logistical issue, then it's bad planning, because you should have arranged for supply much before you set up the plant.
if it is in the hands of the villagers themselves, we can't really blame them for so many reasons. Profit making is an issue there, money is an issue.
Gobar gas plant, the bulk of the problems are maintenance. Why they haven't?
I think what you mean by logistical will translate to labor cost.
Labor cost, getting the supply regularly. Processing.
Yeah,
When villagers are given a biomass plant, they put everything there. It should not happen. There are certain types of biomass which can be giving more energy than that. So they need some training, and they require discipline. Coming back to John's question, that's where solar has won over others. It's much cleaner. It's ready from the manufacturer. Install it. Not much of maintenance. That's one of the reasons why I said. But in the long term, it has to be a combination of even wind also. There are research going on where they will have wind turbines at lower wind speeds. India is not endowed with a lot of wind energy in all places. So that's one of the, so it should be a combination of the two.
I think we'll have a next session.
Okay.